now.
All right, here we go.
So, like I said, I was having some problems deciding on a project. And for this week, what I decided on was to go to my favorite basketball statistics website, basketballreference.com, and pull some data on team statistics, do a little bit of organizing that data, and then make a simple plot for one of the statistics. Um, I thought that if it makes sense to go down this route, what I could do is do some other visualizations, maybe some interactive plots, and then also do some simple algorithms to predict whatever statistic, just to showcase some different algorithms. But I sort of started with just getting the data and showing proof of concept by building a simple plot.
Hmm,
Um,
gotcha.
so I'm not sure if, again, it might make sense to choose a different project, but I guess we can worry about that later.
Yeah.
The other thing is I had hell of a time with VS Code, um, getting it to run. And so I have a different editor that I usually use, but I thought it would be helpful if I tried to run this in VS Code and have you help me troubleshoot there.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so you tell me the best way to go about this. Should I start by just trying to run it, show you what it does?
Yes, let's go through uh, each each um, each line of code. You explaining it to me and then running it at the same time. And then after that, I can share my thoughts about how the code is written and how it can be made better. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. And then so when you want to run the code, what's your plan? How do you plan to run the code line by line?
So that's what I've been having an issue with. Um, so I need to make sure the interpreter has what I need. But
Yeah.
so I'm getting this error, no module request found. I've already installed it,
Hmm.
but it looks like it's not installing on, I must have used a different interpreter.
That's right.
Um, I tried to set up a virtual environment, but I clearly need help with that because
Okay.
either I did and now I can't find the environment,
Okay.
or I didn't. So I'm not sure. I mean, I could try one of these other condo ones.
All right. Let's not do that.
Okay.
In the spirit of best practices and reproducibility, I would suggest we use a Docker environment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, how familiar are you with Docker?
I have a tutorial pulled up on the other page, and I read the first page of it.
How do you find it? Is it something easy,
Um,
understandable?
no. I mean,
No
yeah,
worries.
I think I
That's what
get the
I'm here
gist of
for.
it. I
Uh-huh.
think I get that it's like a virtual environment, but that
Mm.
the difference is it uses less overhead. I don't know in what way it uses less overhead, but
Mhm.
that was sort of the advantage I was seeing in using Docker versus a virtual environment.
Yeah, you got the gist of the benefits.
Okay.
So what I think we should do now is to create a Docker environment, and we'll see that with VS Code, it's not that hard to get started with developing in a Docker environment. Okay, so first thing we need to do is to define a Docker file. So you should create a file named Dockerfile in your root project. Capital D, capital D, and one name. What? Yeah.
Capital F.
Nope. normal case. Yeah. So the reason we do this is because if you name your Docker file this way, you get some automatic detection from VS Code.
Okay.
Yes. So for example, you get syntax highlighting, and then you can see it asks you, do you want to install the recommended extensions for Docker? And the answer is yes, install.
Okay. Where do you see it asking me that?
Your lower right in the VS Code screen.
Oh, lower right. Sorry, my computer was in the way. Yep. So we'll go ahead and install that.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's installed already. So let's go back to we can close this and go back to our Docker file. So the first thing you need to define in any Docker file is to tell it what you want to base your image off. So it's going to be from, and then the image name. I'm not sure if the file is case sensitive, but the convention is to put it all caps. Any directive is spelled with all caps. So from should be all capital. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And then now we need to decide what is the image you want to base it off. I would say that since we are doing a data science project, it will be very useful to base it off the Anaconda environment,
I agree.
right? So let's go to Docker Hub and look for what is the name of the image that that has the Anaconda environment in it. So open your web browser and go to Docker Hub. And then in the search box, just type Anaconda. And I think the first search should be something like continuum io/anaconda tree.
Okay. Sorry. 1 second. I need to create an account.
For Docker Hub, you don't need to.
Okay. It was saying it. Okay. So for what we're doing, I
Yeah.
don't do. Okay. And I'm sorry. You said
Maybe
Continuum Anaconda 3.
no, just search for Anaconda tree. And I believe the first result should be continuum io/anaconda tree.
Yep.
It is,
That's
right?
right. Yep.
So all you need to do is to copy that image name, which is continuum io/anaconda tree. That's the name of the image.
Okay. Now, when you say image, what does that mean?
Okay. So in Docker, wait, yeah, looks right. Oh, and yeah, okay. Let me answer your question first. Um, in Docker terminology, there are two concepts you need to know. One is an image, and the other is a container. A container is a realization of an image.
Okay.
An image is like a config file that will define what your container should look like. Yeah. So
Okay.
right now, this Docker file, you can see it as a config file that will define how the container, how you wish your container to look like.
And then when we realize it, it'll be called a container.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, another thing you need to know is that when you have this kind of uh, directive from continuum io/anaconda tree, what it will do is that it will pull the latest image from Docker Hub, and then it will execute whatever else you tell it to. Um, so if we are comfortable with always pulling the latest image from Docker Hub, then yeah, we can leave it as is. Otherwise, we need to specify a tag, and we do that by appending a colon and then the version number. If you go back to the Docker Hub website, for this Anaconda tree image, there should be a page called tags.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are the things you can append to this from directive to pull a specific version.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so it might make sense for me because the newest version makes sense, but it might not make sense in the future. So it seems like it's always best practice to use a specific version, though for me, the latest version might be appropriate.
Yes.
Okay.
So is that the full name of the type? 2020.11?
Uh, yes. Well,
Okay.
okay. Sorry, this says the OS for it is Linux or AMD 64.
It's fine. Yeah, because yeah, that's fine. Okay. So now usually if you want to install something extra on top of the Anaconda, you would on top of this environment that you're going to create, you would have additional commands, for example, run. And so let's say you want to install the request library, what you would do is run and then pip install requests, I think, something like that. But since you are using the Anaconda environment, the request is already installed. The request library is already installed, so you don't need to do that.
And so it looks like I'll need these beautiful soup commands.
I'm not sure if Beautiful Soup is already included in Anaconda, but it's all right. We'll know when we need it if we
Okay.
get an error when we import. So for now, we can create the container. So go back to your Docker file, save it. You could just have pressed Control S or the Alt
Okay.
S, Command S, whatever on Mac. Or configure it to save, to automatically save. And that's something worth looking into later. Okay,
Okay.
so the way you would create a container is that you need to run a Docker command called Docker build and then whatever. But yeah, it's we could do that on the command line, but with VS Code, it's actually simpler. You don't need to memorize some command. You can do it through the GUI. So the way you would start developing inside this container using VS Code is as follows. You will run the command called open folder inside container. So where is that command located? I don't know. But in VS Code, there is this thing called a command palette that allows you to type the first few letters. Yeah. So you can type open folder container. Interesting. Attach to shell. Developer focus. Docker containers. Remove. Refresh. Huh. Do you actually have Docker installed on your machine?
Let's see.
No,
Yeah.
that's a plugin. It's not
Oh,
the same as the command itself. Can you open the terminal?
open what?
Open the terminal. Wait.
Yeah, if I needed to do anything else, I almost certainly didn't do it. Um,
Uh-huh.
so, okay. I can share the terminal if that'd be helpful, but it's open.
Um, so open a new terminal. Do you see the plus sign in the top of the terminal?
No.
So right now you have your Python interpreter open, right? So if you look at the top section of the terminal. Do you see problems output debug file
Oh,
terminal?
sorry. I thought you meant open a terminal on my computer,
Ah,
not within VS Code.
okay.
Hi. Sorry.
I see. So just type Docker version, sorry, Docker space double dash version, double dash, and then version. Yep, version. Yeah, you don't have Docker installed, so you need it installed.
Okay. Okay. So we will run the same command. Um,
Docker double dash version.
okay.
Yep,
Great.
so we have it installed. Now, earlier we did say that we are installing whatever plugins that VS Code detected when we started the Docker file, but I'm not sure if it's installing the plugins that we need to actually start developing inside a container. So let's check that. So do you see on your left side, the sidebar, the second one from the bottom, that's your extension like tab that shows all the installed extension. Can you just type remote? Yeah, see?
Remote containers.
Yes, we need that. So install. And it is installed. So we can close this screen, this tab. And now we can open your project inside the container defined by Dockerfile. So to do that, just run, just close this dialog. So to do that, we can open the command palette and then search for the command open folder in container or reopen folder in container, something like that. Oh no, you shouldn't have deleted that
Yeah.
greater than sign. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, the Zoom is getting in the way of it. So let me
Oh.
open folder and container.
Yes. Oh, yeah, okay, you can try that. Well, what happened?
It pulled up my, oh, you can't see this. It pulled up my desktop to find the folder.
Okay. Maybe a better command would be reopen folder in container, because then it will imply that, the current folder. So you don't have to select it. You see it? Reopen in container. Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So then it asks you what is your container? So we say it's from Dockerfile. And so now it's building a container, and then it will build your container in such a way that your project will be inside the container, and whatever files you modify inside the container will be reflected in your local hard drive
Okay.
version. Yeah.
So if I were to then say beautiful soup is not included, would I can change the image and save it and it will automatically know that the container's changed?
No, if you update your Docker file, you'll need to rebuild and reopen container. Yeah. So can you just click that link starting dev container show log, just so that we can view the progress?
Show log. Oh, down here.
Yeah. So this is what it's doing. So it's still building. It's reading the context. Huh? Is it? Can you scroll all the way down?
This
Is this all the way
down.
down?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that was the timer. So it's executing 3 out of 4 directive. Yeah. Okay. All right, so it's done.
Okay.
Now, since you are developing inside VS Code, you should, in Python, you should install the Python plugin. So
I
let's
do
check
have
whether you do
that.
have it.
Yeah, but we can double check.
Yeah. So you have it locally, but not inside this container.
Okay.
So what you should do is to configure your container to automatically install this plugin inside the container. So to do that in VS Code, all you need to do is to figure out the ID of the plugin you want to install. And in this case, you can do that by looking at the plugin, for example, Python for VS Code. Now, I think the official one, like, the parent plugin is the Python for VS. Oh, no, it's not
I think this one is
the
the
first one. Okay.
yeah.
So you need to figure out the ID, and the ID is if you click the gear icon,
Which icon?
the gear icon, still on the extensions pane. Do you see that? Not you're looking at the extensions Python details, but I'm saying look at the extensions pane on your left,
Oh, okay. Okay.
where you have to select the extension you want to view. So if you look at the Python, yeah, that's the gear icon.
Okay.
So click that, and then you see copy extension ID. And by the way, the extension ID is, I think it's usually that thing in gray. You see that Python, and then there's MS Python,
Okay.
MS
Yep.
dash Python. Yeah, that's the ID.
Okay.
So now to tell VS Code to always install this ID into your container, go back to your file explorer. You notice there's a new folder called .dev container.
Mm-hmm.
Click that, open that, and then click that .dev container JSON. So this is something specific to VS Code. And if you look at line 17 and 18, on 17 it says add the IDs of the extensions you want installed when the container is created. So let's add that ID, just paste.
And will
And
that
then you need, sorry?
quotation?
Yep, quotation.
Okay.
And since we modified the container config, we need to rebuild the container. So save this, and then in the command palette, run the rebuild container, or maybe rebuild and reopen in container, something like that. Rebuild,
Build.
yeah, rebuild container. This should be fast because we didn't actually modify the Docker file. It's
Okay.
just a config thing. So yeah, see, it's already done. But now, if you look at your extensions pane, you will see that Python is already installed. Uh,
So if I were to come down to
you see that? Yeah,
yep.
see, it's already installed.
Yep.
Before it says install in container, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we are ready to review your code. And so what we can do is for each line, um, no Python interpreter selected. Okay, so yeah, let's select your Python interpreter, and there should only be one, which is, oh yeah, in addition to the system, yeah, but we want to use the Anaconda one, so it's the Anaconda.
Yep.
Okay, so what we can do is that for each line of the code, we will send it to the Python REPL. And so if you open your command palette, and then you type something like run in active, yeah, oh, no, oh, sorry, no, there should be something similar in Python. So
Run
yeah, run,
selection
yeah,
Python. Okay. Yeah, I have a what do you call it? A hotkey for that.
ah, then we can use that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That's a good sign.
Yep. All
Yep.
right. So
Soup
beautiful
works as
stop is
well.
installed. Yeah. Okay. So you have every library you need.
Perfect.
So so
Um,
let's go through each line.
After about 2 hours of that, I just wrote it in PyCharm and then copy and pasted it. So, um, okay. So you tell me the level of detail, more or less detail, but so starting with line 9, we're just creating a string that has the specific URL that we're going to try to pull the table from. Then we're going to use the request library to make a request to that particular URL. We're going to use Beautiful Soup to parse through the HTML for that page. And then, so that stuff is pretty straightforward. Then it gets interesting. So the particular table we want is stored as a comment in the HTML code instead of as a table. And so what I needed to do was extract all of the comments so that I could read in that table. And so I'm using the find all method in Beautiful Soup. And what I'm finding is I'm finding comments that contain text using a Lambda function inside the argument. So this is probably the messiest part of the code. It's just that we're pulling it from the comment instead of from the table itself.
But what is that comment? I don't see it defined anywhere. Is it imported somewhere?
Which comment? Oh,
The so in the Lambda, there's that comment with a capital C. Yeah, that one.
yeah. This is from Beautiful Soup. It's defining it as a comment in the
Okay.
HTML. So it's yeah, it's from Beautiful Soup.
But I'm curious, at what point did you import that?
At no point did I import that, yet it worked.
Also, Beautiful Soup automatically imported it. Okay.
It must have, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Okay. Moving on.
yeah, I had to modify that from something I found online. So there are multiple tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty list and then iterate through each of the comments. Comments were just all of the tables that I pulled from, or all of the text, excuse me, all the text that I pulled from the HTML comments. I'm going to iterate through each one of those. And if it's a table, then it's going to have a table label in the HTML, and I'm going to append it to my list. It's going to automatically convert it to a pandas data frame because I'm using the pandas table or read HTML command. And so what I'm going to get left with is a list of tables. um, and then,
Hold on, Zach. Tell me more about the value error exception.
yeah,
Why
so
do we need it there?
we don't, but I thought it was best practice to have, well, sorry, we need it because some things are not going to be, uh, it's not going to be able to read everything. And so we don't want the code to just stop working. We'd rather throw an error. The particular error is not important. Um, and so I have it print something. I was reading in the Python documentation that that's best practice is to print some error,
Mhm.
but the particular error seems less important because it's basically the comments are going to be either a table or it's going to be just a traditional HTML comment. Um, And so
Okay.
we only want things that can be read into a pandas data frame.
Yeah, so Zach, I'd say let's wrap this up, and then yeah, we can continue next week.
Okay. This doesn't seem to be running though, which is concerning to me.
Yeah, and the reason is because yeah, that's so when you see a triple dot in the Python terminal, it means that it's still expecting you to complete your input, and usually it means that it's a new line. You need to enter a new line.
Okay.
Yeah, or close a parenthesis or a bracket, that kind of things. Yeah, and then can you just print tables, execute tables in the terminal? Okay, so there is something there.
Yep.
Cool.
So it's gonna end up pulling quite a few tables, some of which are um, not useful. Most of which are not useful because the particular URL has about 30 tables on it. Um, one thing I didn't know that I was curious about, so one question I had when doing this is iterating through these tables is only helpful for me figuring out which table I need to choose. It's not integral to the code necessarily. Um, so is this helpful to keep because it shows the process of how I'm choosing the table? Um, I mean, it's helpful in the sense that it is creating it as a pandas data frame. Um, so I didn't know if you would leave stuff like that in there first, if you would modify it or like change it to a comment once you've chosen the particular. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I would leave it like this because I want it to be reproducible in the future. What I would do maybe is to make the selection more specific so that I can remove that exception statement. Then when the code breaks, I know that the website has changed and I need to figure out how to update my code. Because right now, if I see a value error, I don't know, is it because the data, the website has changed, or indeed it's just a regular comment, not a table?
Okay. So would you change the accept or just remove it?
Um, I would remove it because if something goes wrong, I prefer my code to break. And especially in this case, this is like an exploratory kind of code. It's not something you will do deploy in production. So yeah, I prefer it to break.
Okay. So I'll have to modify this because I am getting one of those errors because some of them are specifically comments.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll have to figure out a way to, well, I would leave the try in place then, right? And just remove the accept clause.
No. Uh, if you're going to remove the accept clause, then what's the point of having a try?
Um, because if I were to run this just as a for loop, I think it wouldn't work because it would come across some things that are just comments and some things that are tables.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that because right now your criteria of selecting table is to just take every single comment and assume that it's going to be a valid table. If it's not, throw a value error. But what I'm saying is that you should spend some time to really just zero in on comments that are really table. So maybe once you've selected all the comments, look at each comment and see whether there's like a TD or TR tag,
That makes
maybe.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Or
that way,
some like distinguishing tag. Yeah.
okay. Do you have recommendations for what would be useful to try for next week?
Yes, I do a lot actually.
Okay.
So yeah, let's take it like, 1 hour at a time per week.
Okay.
Yeah, break it in chunks. So to recap, what we've learned today, we've learned how to create a Docker environment and so that anyone can rerun your code regardless of uh, what your platform is, whether it's Windows machine or Mac machine or Linux. All you need to tell the person is install Docker and you're good to go. That is all.